The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, George.
Was that an echo I heard?
Whoa.
See, this is why real podcasters have to have their cameras on, because if I didn't see the shit-eating grin on your face, I would have totally missed that.
Exactly. And I think that as ham-handed and obvious as that was, I felt like it was a good lead into this episode.
Because this game is hand-handed and really obvious.
Really obvious, pretty well, I mean, let's not bury the lead. We're really bad about that.
We're
like, pretty
really,
much,
yes.
I don't think that anybody's on pins and needles by the end of the episode being like, oh, I wonder what they thought about it. But just like in real life and dealing with real people, nobody really has to think too hard about what we actually think of them.
I think it's important to know that Ecco the Dolphin is a terrible, terrible, terrible game that we are now about to tell you why it's terrible. There's no, I mean, you should know when you go to the world's greatest pizza place that you're getting the world's greatest pizza. It's not like they wait till you finish and they were like, hey, would you say that was the world's greatest pizza? No, there's a huge sign out front, and outside the store that sells Ecco the Dolphin, it says this game is pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's why I miss decent pizza. There was a place in our college town called Decent Pizza, and they actually had pretty good pizza. But man, you just go in and you're just expecting decent pizza. I'm like, this was the best sell ever.
Yeah. No, they just they didn't dress it up. But we should actually talk about why we played this hot mess. So what are your nostalgia goals like for Ecco the Dolphin?
So this is a unique one for me, because the only time I ever played this game was my dentist had it in his waiting room.
You're right. So, that is a weird one.
Yeah. So basically that, whenever I would be waiting to, specifically my orthodontist, the person who put on my braces, right? So whenever I'd be waiting to go to see him, I would play Ecco the Dolphin. And I think that that's probably good, because the only way this game would be considered good is if it was immediately then compared to going to the dentist. So that's the only way that I could possibly have fond memories of it, which I do. Is I was like, this game is, nothing to write home about, but it was fun. And when I went back to play, I was like, well, comparatively, yes. I'd rather be doing this than getting my teeth drilled into, but only marginally.
I'm just imagining, a little kid in the back of the woody station wagon, and his mom's like, oh, we're going to play Ecco the Dolphin, and he's just like, oh, can I just get another root canal, please?
Please. Yep. So that was mine. How about you?
So I definitely borrowed this from my older brother's neighbor friend, who I think I've mentioned once or twice at least before. Kirk.
He was the Ronaldo, right?
Yes.
Like Steven Universe Ronaldo.
Oh, yes. Yeah, essentially.
So that's the way I picture him. So
yeah, no, that's fair. He's actually like the opposite. He's very tall and unbelievably lanky. Like strong breeze break him in half lanky.
Interesting.
But you can picture him as Ronaldo Fryman. That holds up. So he he had this game. He let me borrow it, and we're not going to we're going to give the game a fair shake, because we always do. But the one thing I will say up front, since we've already, kind of given away how we felt about it, is I'm pretty sure that I never actually tried to play this game before, and that I just swam around and was a dolphin. And there's a good chance that as a 7-year-old, that's just what I thought this was. Right?
Dolphin Simulator. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was kind of having that feeling, we were doing our replay, and I was just like, oh my God, this is such hot garbage. How did I think this was any fun as a kid? And the more I got into it, the more I was like, oh, because I probably never actually played this game before. I probably played this game before. And then, right as that thought was, leaving my mind out into the ether gave it right back, because one of our listeners on Twitter was like, oh man, I played that game all the time as a kid. My whole family loved just swimming around and being a dolphin. And I was like, but But was that all you did? Because that's like the only way to enjoy this game.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, like, and we'll get into it, but that portion of it is enjoying. It's kind of like saying, hey, I like running, and then being like, well, if you like running, then try running while on fire and we shoot you. And it's like, well, I don't like any of that. I don't like how you're making me run, but the act of running, that's pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, I really like swimming. Try swimming away from a boat wreck. Like it's it's just not context super matters.
Yeah. So, but right before we get into visuals, there was one other thing that I noticed about this game as we were going through our video game library is they made a sequel.
They did. They also went out of their way to re-release this later on multiple consoles.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, like, the way you could go onto like the Wii and be like, oh man, I'd love to play Super Mario Brothers 3, but I don't have a Nintendo anymore. I'll buy it on the Virtual Console. This is one of those. Like, there are people who remembered this game fondly enough. I mean, unfortunately, we have to count ourselves among these people, but like, who went out of their way to add this to their library.
Yeah, we are in the darkest timeline. But anyways, top of the hour, visuals.
So I cannot remember the one other game that I had this feeling about, but I really think this game looks better not moving than moving, because if you pause the game, the pause screen is just a still of whatever you're doing, right? And like the rocks are lovingly rendered, and the mountain, like when you're still up above the water, like the mountains and islands way off in the distance are lovingly rendered, and Echo's gray, like, so he looks kind of shiny, is like lovingly rendered, and his like little dash animation is lovingly rendered, and you can pause it and like see what a still frame of that looks like. I don't really love the way this game looks in motion, because everything is kind of like they were animated by different teams. Like when Echo swims around, he swims in like a really believable, like dolphin-y way where like you can't turn on a dime. You actually turn in the water. Like it takes time and frames of animation and you see it happen. But then like some enemies are not limited by like your pathetic 3-dimensional physics and they can like turn instantly on a dime and they do not have a turning animation. And whether that was like an intentional choice or just like artistic laziness, it means that they are faster than you in a way you can never be. Like you can't magically instantly turn around. And then like some of the bigger enemies, like the big like octopus, like he looks really pretty until you notice that he only has like 4 frames of animation, but because he takes up so much of the screen, each frame covers like a huge distance. Like his movements are very herky-jerky, and next to Echo's, which are so buttery smooth, it's like each thing statically looks very pretty, and in motion it's just very clunky and really like it was done by different teams. Like it's very awkward.
Yeah. I definitely felt that the Echo moved pretty well. Specifically, one of the things that I had written down was that when he does his like dash, like I thought the dash had a good look and a good feel to it, which is good because you dash a lot,
Yes. They thankfully thought about that.
Well, and also too, and we'll get into this more mechanics, but like I didn't see really a downside that often, because like when you're dashing, anything that you run into you kill,
or at least do damage to. Some enemies actually do take more than one bump,
right? But so to me it's just kind of like, well, I can be moving forward and vulnerable, or moving forward faster and not as vulnerable. So I was like, second option. So I pretty exclusively dashed around. So I was glad that dash animation was like, it felt good. And like, when you like zoom forward, I was like, yeah, no, this feels pretty neat. Overarching for the visuals, for the sake of visuals, I actually thought that they were okay. So part of the things that one of the things I just have trouble with as a human is like looking at something, like distinguishing, like for example, with people, like looks from personality. So when somebody says like, well, how attractive do you think this person is? I'm like, well, it's hard for me to say, because the more I value them as a person, the more I'm more likely to just subconsciously overlook their flaws, and thus
I mean, I understand where you're going. I'm just waiting for you to say like something horrible, but I don't think you're going to. I'm just like, I'm on pins and needles.
no. But so the moral of the story, though, is that with the game with these visuals, is I'm trying my best to disintegrate the visuals themselves from how awful I think this game is.
Oh, so this is a beautiful person with a terrible personality. It's not the reverse.
Correct. Yeah. No, for me, this is somebody where, they walk into a room, you're like, my God, they're stunning. And then they're like, they just open their mouths and just vitriol and garbage comes flying out. And you're like, oh no.
Oh no. Yeah. It's, so this is an opinion thing, but I need to say it because I have an all caps note about it, which is, I hope you like dithering. So I know you've dabbled in pixel art a little bit. Are you familiar with the term dithering?
I am not.
Okay, so dithering is a thing in color blending, but specifically in pixel art, because you can't blend colors. You either have a pixel of a certain color or it's a different color, but it can't be both. Or it can't be like a true gradient. So you do imagine like a checkerboard, right? But instead of black and white or red and black or whatever, they're two like really similar colors. And then the further you get to one end of the board, the more of the second color there is. So like most of one color on the left, about equal amounts in the middle, and then most of the other color on the right. And it creates like a transition effect, which when done correctly looks really, really nice. And you basically have to do it in pixel art. Like it'd be really difficult to never, ever dither unless you just don't want to have shading, because it's the only way you can really do shading. I feel like they kind of went overboard. Like every single surface and every single thing is dithered. Like the sky is dithered, the ocean is dithered, Echo is dithered, the dash animation is dithered, like the bubbles are dithered. Like everything has this dithering effect on it, and it's just, I don't think it's done well, frankly. Like it's just, I should not be looking at it and being like, everything is made out of chessboards. Like that should not be my experience with graphics. So this is like one place where the movement helps a lot, because the dithering stands out a lot when you're on the pause screen and you can just stare at it. But when you're moving, because the water dithers a lot, you're constantly going from like lighter colors to darker colors, and like the rocks are all dithered, but you're like zooming past them and you don't notice it as much. But that's the one thing. And this is it's a taste thing. Some people are like, no, it looks fine. That's how you can tell that there's texture and shading. And I don't think it's done real well, but like, I'm trying to recognize that this is more subjective than it is strictly objective graphics quality. But it's like a dithering person's phobia nightmare. Like if you know someone who doesn't like dithering and you just held up like a screenshot of Ecco the Dolphin, it'd be like, no.
No. Yeah, no, that's fair. I also really thought that I really liked the fact that as you dive deeper, the background gets darker, Yes.
I specifically called out that lighting effect in my notes. Like that's a legit attention to detail.
It's a legit attention to detail. And also I feel that because it meshes well with the breathing mechanic. So the further underwater you are, the further away you are from that sweet, sweet O2, man, And so thus the more inherently in danger you are, right?
Yeah.
So like having a more dark, foreboding atmosphere the further down you get, I feel like it meshes well with that mechanic, because like as it got darker, like I just kind of felt colder. I mean, like, and I used to, like scuba dive a fair amount, and so like it it felt like that, like it had a very good game feel of like, oh, I am in more dangers just by virtue of me being this far underwater,
Yeah. And there are certain monsters and things that are only deep underwater. So not only does it help you remember the breathing mechanic, but it also kind of inspires you to maybe not playfully dash around quite so much, because like the rocks might be covered with spikes, or there might be like a terrifying tentacle thing that grabs you that I was never quite able to figure out what it was. What the hell was that thing?
Dude, I don't know what most of this stuff was. I mean, if we're talking about just insanity in the way of visuals, I mean, not to, like jump the gun and give it all away at the beginning, but I mean, space aliens?
Oh no, we're going to get there. Like that you can't talk about this game and never address the aliens, because if you did, I would assume you're an alien in disguise.
Of course not.
No.
But anywho, but yeah, no, I mean, like from the very beginning, and actually Megan had to help me with this because I was like swimming around and I kept pinging the other dolphins, and I was like, how do I make this not a dolphin simulator? Like, how do I move forward? And she was like, you got to jump really high. And I was like, how do you know that? And she was like, one of the dolphins told you to do that. I'm like, a lot of the other dolphins told me to do that. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is Simon's Quest. Like, like you talk to a bunch of dolphins, you know, like nothing they say is helpful. It's all cryptic. Some of them lie to you, you know, like it's just straight up the Eagle Raptor video. And I was just kind of like, oh my sweet dear God. Like, so then that was when, and I know that's like, you know, story mechanics, but like, that was when I got the foreboding of like, this is not gonna end well. So then but again, for the visuals, I kind of focused in and I was like, well, actually, I mean, the game looks great, which is probably in part why I have such fond memories of it, because I only played it for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, and it was a dolphin simulator.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, you know, this game's kind of fun. It's kind of neat. And then you actually like sit down and you play it, and you're like, oh no. So, also normally about this time we talk about the hitbox. You want to?
Oh, the hitbox for me was it started in the top left corner of the television, and then it went across to the top right corner of the television, and then that line traced all the way down to the bottom left and right corner. And if any enemies went into that part of the screen, I took damage. Sometimes multiple hits until I died.
Yeah, no, I actually, mine extended all the way out to where Megan was sitting. So things that weren't on the screen but would have been rendered 10 feet away where she was sitting, that hit me and I took damage.
Yeah, and this is where the adorable, lovingly rendered turn animation that Echo has becomes an infuriating game mechanic.
You're right, it's infuriating.
Because it you crash into something and you take damage, and then you're like, oh, now I'm going to beautifully swish my tail around and turn. Oh, I got hit again. It interrupted my turn animation. Okay, now I'm going to turn around and beautifully swish my tail. Oh, I got hit again. It interrupted my turn animation. And like, there were a couple times where I was like, I'm just going to keep running into this thing and testing backing away from it to see if I am just screwing up the controls. And I'm not. The hitbox is just gigantic. And if you don't basically bounce off far enough when you take damage, sometimes you're just trapped, and sometimes you just keep taking damage till you die.
Yep. And also, too, one of the things that I thought interacted really poorly was the way the hitbox interacted. Your attacking hitbox interacted with your I've been hit hitbox, you know, because your hitbox it feels definitely small, but certainly unintuitive. Because there were a couple of times where like I would hit a thing, but because of the way it was shaped and its hitbox was bizarrely shaped, I would also take damage.
Yes.
And I was like, no, I hit and killed them the only way I knew how. I mean, it'd be like literally like me stabbing somebody with a sword, and then they're like, yeah, but I got you too. I'm like, the only thing that touched you was my sword. It's like, yeah, but your sword's a part of you, so you also take damage. I'm like, look, I know that the final stage of mastery is a sword being an extension of yourself, but that's a metaphor, not indicative of me actually taking damage.
Yeah, but my blood is poison, and now it's on your sword.
Oh, we're going Hamlet up in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole combat mechanic. I almost wish it was just Dolphin Simulator, and it was like Dolphin Fetch Quest where you have to like go find other dolphins and stuff, and like because the combat mechanic it's not fun. It's not fun at all. And like 200 or 300 hours in, you get the death sonar, and that makes combat a little less egregious because then at least you can murder things from like a slight distance. So hopefully they don't get to murder you back while you're murdering them. But like it's just not fun. The combat is just not fun at all.
No, and I think that this is a great example of a game, like you said, that would benefit from not having a combat mechanic. But unfortunately, it was put out during a time period where that was way more rare than it is now. And it's still kind of rare, you know, that there's no combat mechanic. But like realistically, I think you kind of hit it where it's just kind of like, well, what if we just had this, you know, beautifully rendered game, and that the only challenge was being able to accomplish your tasks before you ran out of air. Like, no hit points, none of that garbage. Just try to get the task done basically on a time limit where, it'd be kind of like a little bit like Celeste, where the bulk of, I mean, there is definitely a combat mechanic there, but it's way drowned down. Like, the main thing is just like whether or not you can accomplish this thing and before you have to grab onto a cliff, right? Do
you know the term walking simulator?
I mean, I can puzzle it out because I know the word walking. I know the word simulator.
So a game like Firewatch or the Stanley Parable or Gone Home, any game that basically has like if you imagine like the Doom engine or like any first person game, but like there's no combat. So it's a game about like exploration and solving puzzles sometimes and like finding a story. Like, this game could have been that game, and we have now gone way deep into mechanics, but like because the combat is so poorly done, and because a lot of that comes from the hitbox being a hot mess, it almost feels like they built Dolphin Simulator and then some suit was like, how come nothing is dying? And then they were like, it's a dolphin simulator. And they were like, nope. I need some pufferfish and I need them to explode into stars when you crash into them at high speed. It's like, but wouldn't crashing into a pufferfish at high speed be worse for me than the pufferfish? No, just do it. And like, it's oh God, it's just freaking maddening. So that's how I'm going to tie that back to visuals, but we cannot possibly address the visuals in this game without talking about the text screens, like the dialogue screens. God. No. Okay. So the text screens. Okay. So it's not been any secret that I don't think that text is the best way to deliver pretty much any information in a video game. Like, there's a very, very and again, it can be used and it can be passable. And I think that there are some games where you could make the argument where it is the best way to do it. But I think that most of those are games where you're trying to raise the cost of entry, Well,
like,
or like an RPG, which is literally like the game is about the dialogue and you need to have dialogue between the characters. But that was only a limitation of the era, which they later replaced with voices.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, like, I'm not, and again, like, text can be used. It's just, I generally think that there can be a better way. Now, resources are finite on any project, so is it worth spending your time figuring out the most clever way to possibly deliver your tutorial, or is it worth spending that time and energy somewhere else because your game's relatively intuitive anyways, so you just deliver it through text? 6-1, like each project's different. But that being said, man, like, the fact that you have to hit your sonar button, wait for it to ping back. Screen goes black. Screen comes up with your whatever dumb dolphins dumb say, because they say some dumb anyways. And so then you have to like hit X, and then it all like and then it all just falls away like tears in the rain, and then you're just right, but it just takes forever.
Well, and for every single conversation, because a lot of what you have to do is like basically other dolphins ordering you around in the first few levels. They're like, I lost my pod. I don't know where your pod is, but I lost my pod. And frankly, my problem is worse than your problem. So if you could stop caring about finding your family and go find my, like, that's like the first 3 levels. Like, abandon the thing you're doing to fix my problem. So you have to like sonar a dolphin's face, and then they sonar you back and they're like, oh, I lost my pod. I think they're over there. And so help you God if you like A-buttoned through that too much, because you still get the little swimmy up animation, and then you still get the explodey animation, but you don't get to see the text if you do it too fast. And so then you have to like, okay, and then you have to like sonar them again, and now like you're gun shy and you don't want to keep trying to accelerate the animation because you're afraid you're gonna like explodey swooshy animation the text off the screen again. So you have to like wait through the little swooshy come up from the bottom animation, read the text, and then press A, and then it explodes off the screen, and every single word you read, all the level title screen, cue cards, all the title cards. Jesus Christ, that took me a long time to get through. all the title cards in between levels, all of the little hints you get from like dolphins and whales and stuff. The password screen, like it's all just this swooshy text animation. Like some poor animator made that animation and then like died on their way to work, and they were like, the only way to honor Josephine's memory is to use this animation 100 times more than we were originally planning. And it's like, I think we could probably just like, send flowers or like maybe help cover costs or something. It's like, nope. We're just going to take this animation she already finished and we're just going to run it 1,000 times over the course of the game.
Yeah. You know what? It actually is very reminiscent of, so basically, whenever you put text animation on the screen that does that, either, by virtue of, like you said, like, like it bamps away too fast or what have you, it just reminds me so much of the owl in Ocarina,
Do you want me to repeat that?
Yes. I mean, no. I mean, it's like like, what is your favorite color? Blue. No, wait, I meant, and it's just like, nope, you're done. You're back in another cycle. So yeah, it's just not great. Anytime when, doing that, like when, if you have frustrated the player to the point where they are like rapidly thumbing a button, it's not good. Like something's gone wrong, and it's like, oh, well, they should be more patient. Listen, it's like, it's a game. Your game shouldn't be making them impatient. Like that. That's life. Like life makes you impatient. The game should just be fun.
Well, and this is, you just alluded to something. I was wondering when would be a good time to slot it in. So here I go. There's this argument I've heard before, and I think I may have even mentioned this once or twice before on the show, but like this argument of like, is there a right way to play a video game, right? Kind of like, is there a right way to play with Lego bricks? Like most people would say, no, you can use your imagination. But when you start talking about video games, people are like, well, yeah, there's like a start and an objective and like an end, unless it's a game like Tetris or Pac-Man where the objective is just to get, the highest score possible. And even that is still like, that's the objective, but you eventually lose always. But most games, especially console games, have like a start and a story and an end of some kind. And I really think that this game, the fact that so many people that I've mentioned this game to are like, oh yeah, man, it was really fun to just like swim around in the water. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the game. Like that's not what this game is. And if that's all you're getting out of it, then is that a failure of the designers or is it an accidental success? Because I feel like causing the player to mash the A button to get through the text, like that is definitely a failure of the designers. But if somebody bought this game and then just swam around in the opening area for 10 or 15 minutes a pop, but played it for like years and years and years, like it's hard to call that a failure. It's way more like an accidental success. So like you can do something happy by accident, but like the times you engender like frustration and impatience, like those feel more on purpose. Like you didn't do it right. You didn't design a good game.
Well, and actually I would say that I would argue that the game is a failure whenever the game engenders unintended consequences, right? Now, for example, there are games that are frustration-based games. Like they want you to be frustrated, in which case then if you get the player frustrated, then you have succeeded. And if they are not, then hilariously you've failed, right? And so I think that we need to distinguish between whether or not it's a failure as a game or a failure on design, because a game can be successful but then still be a design failure because it didn't achieve the game designer's objective.
Yeah, and that is what I would say is happening here. Which by the way,
tons of people love this game.
for future listeners, none of this is going to get cut out and moved into the mechanics section. You're just getting a preview.
Yep. Put that in the bookmarks, like visuals, mechanics preview, visuals. So to bring it back to visuals, another thing that I had is just like kind of a throwaway point, but again, it kind of talks to the hitbox a little bit, is it's hard to tell, for me at least, when I ate fish, like to
gain
health. you eat fish to gain health.
Dude, what?
Well, there it is. I mean, there's another reason. I mean, apparently it's so difficult to see that you can play the entire game without noticing it. Yeah, man. It's you can eat fish, you gain health.
Dude, what? Like, do you press a button to make this happen? Like, is there any indication other than you getting hit points back that this has happened?
No. You have to dive, like dash at them. But if you dash at fish, the fish will disappear and you get health. And no, that's it. That's all you get. I think there's a slight, like, kind of like gulp sound, but it's like really slight, you know, like, and like, look, because I think I might have heard it, or I may have just been projecting. But yeah, the fish will disappear and you will, but the only real way to know is that you gained health. But the only way to do that is if you actually dash through the school of fish and hit a fish, you know, which you could easily go the entire game without doing.
Okay. Like, does anyone tell you that? Or is that something you're just expected to notice? Are there a lot of fish early on?
One of your podlings tells you. Did you talk to all of the podlings without mashing through the text?
Okay. First, is podlings actually the right term for that?
Nope. Sure isn't.
Yeah, dude, I don't. Okay, so I feel like, and I'm pretty confident in saying neither of us made it anywhere close to the end of this game.
No, but I did want to so I did watch a playthrough to the end, so I could make sure that the end was as bonkers insane as I had heard it was.
Yeah.
And the playthrough that I had was actually very nicely done, but I don't know whether the guy like did this on purpose or just didn't have his mic completely turned off or away. But when it ends, you hear like this. Yes! Thank God it's finally over. Oh God, I hate this game so much. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. Anywho, but yeah, so no, I didn't finish the game.
So the reason I ask is because, like, I wonder just how many moments throughout the game would someone in our position, or, you know, a frustrated player, or just a player who can't read, just mash the A button through the text, hoping like, oh, well, I'll figure it out through organic gameplay. And it's like, no, you won't. You won't figure it out through organic gameplay. If you skipped that screen, you skipped that knowledge.
Yep, it's gone forever. Yeah, and so apparently, it is very hard to tell that you're eating fish in the sense that if you did not know that it was happening, you wouldn't know that it's happening.
That's great. It's just great.
So one of the things, though, and this is one other final throwaway, and then like I have one final note on visuals. The final throwaway is, actually kind of all links together, which is I thought that it was interesting the way they varied the stages, you know, like how you have like normal tropical setting and then crazy ice cavern that looks like it was pulled straight out of Gradius, and then insane prehistoric time, and then I swear to God, the Atlantean habitat, I'm so sure they ripped wholesale from Sonic.
Right?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that is right out of Sonic 1. Like, that is not even, It's not even similar. It's like the people working on Ecco the Dolphin, like, went a few offices down to the people working on Sonic 1, and they were like, can we use that texture? And they were like, yeah, sure. Just, you know, change it up a little bit. And they were like, yeah. It's almost lunch.
We're totally going to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So I'm glad that wasn't just me, because I looked at that and I'm like, am I in the right walkthrough? Is this a Sonic game?
Yeah. It almost looks like a bad ROM hack you would see on YouTube, where it's like, you know, what would Sonic be like as Ecco the Dolphin? And yeah, it's very jarring. And like,
oh God, there's almost certainly bad fan fiction of like Sonic and
Echo. Nope. Shut up. I swear to God, I will shut this whole thing down.
Curtain falls.
I agree with you, though, that like the variations in the level designs is really good, and because the graphics are really beautiful, like they all look really good, but because the game is so unfun, you're never going to see any of it because you're never going to get there.
Nope. I mean, like, because I got pretty far through the tropical area, but I'm not gonna lie, I did not make it to the ice caverns on my own virtue.
No, dude,
Um,
not even close.
so the thing was like I queued up the the walkthrough, and so I was just like going through it, and so at one point I just like started going through it at like 5x speed or whatever, and then all of a sudden I saw insane ice caverns. I was like, wait, what? And like rolled it back a little bit, and it's like, like be prepared to go into like the cold. I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be ice, because it definitely looked like a spaceship, which I was ready for because I'd seen the ending, and I was like, no, this is different stuff. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, it's the art department did not, other than ripping that one level from Sonic, they did not really cut corners. Like everything is pretty. I mean, pretty is the right word. Like it's not very anything. Everything is very pretty. Like it's sad that most people will think this is Dolphin Simulator and never ever not only see the later insanity, but get to experience the absolute bonkers insanity that happens later. But before we can talk about any of that, we should probably talk about the audio.
Yep, audio. The music I thought was actually kind of a little weird. I thought that it was sparse, I guess. Like that the instrumentation wasn't, I don't know, like it felt like it was like lacking, like it didn't feel full even for this type of music, like if you compare it to like Sonic, which feels full, like this felt like it was missing some instruments, and you know way more about sound than I do, but it kind of led it to being almost like an otherworldly kind of vibe a couple of times for me. But again, I'm not the audio guy.
So I can't hear the audio without the knowledge that this game literally has aliens, and you literally go into space and you literally fight aliens, and it's weird. But if you try to imagine the first music in the first levels, it's happier, like it's a slightly happier melody, but that doesn't last very long. And even that slightly happier melody is still like, it's very not just simple instrumentation by the standards of the day, but like it's just really simple. Like there aren't a lot of instruments going at the same time. There aren't a lot of harmonies or anything. It's mostly just like the melody with like maybe a quiet like drum part or a bass part that like goes in and out kind of sometimes. And the further you get into the game, the more kind of ominous and foreboding the music gets. And I actually really liked this music, and I particularly like this music through the lens of knowing what is on the horizon. Like, because Ecco is supposed to be this like magic dolphin with magic face stars and whatever, and like that's why he's the hero of the game, because he's the magic dolphin. But if you think about like because what's it, like 5 seconds into the game before like the terrifying like tornado and everything getting sucked up toward the sky, and then it's like, what just happened? And everyone's like, oh my god, we need to go and like figure things out. And Echo starts like swimming around and trying to help the other dolphins and stop the mean sharks and the pufferfish and stuff, and he knows something's wrong, and the music kind of clues you into that. Like, this is not Dolphin Simulator. Like, if you listen to this music, you would be like, this is not a fun, like, tropical, like, I'm swimming around in warm, sunny waters. Like, everything feels kind of empty and ominous, and like you're not supposed to be paying attention to the music because you're like constantly looking side to side, like trying to figure out where the next threat is coming from. And the further you go into the game, like the ice level doesn't have like fun ice music that sounds kind of like Christmas with jingle bells. Like it's like ominous and heavy. And then like when you get into the spaceship eventually, it's like very much like the electronica thing is kind of there at the beginning, and then it's like ramped way up, and it's like very digital and very electronic, and it's almost like the composers were trying to let you know from the word go in this game, like, I know it looks like a dolphin simulator. It looks and plays like a dolphin simulator. That's not what this is. This is a terrifying alien story. So we're going to hit you with this like sci-fi music right at the beginning. And I don't know that I would be casting any of this if I didn't know how it ends, but I can't unknow that knowledge. So that's the excuse I'm coming up with for it.
Well, it's almost like, they said like, hey, what if we created this amazing dolphin simulator? And everybody's like, yeah, man, on board. And then, the CEO comes in and goes like, no one's gonna play that. Not there's like a bunch of death and all this sort of stuff. Now, if we made a game about like dolphin aliens, that's where it's at. And they told the mechanics department and they told the sound department, but just nobody told the guys working on the visuals, And so it was just kind of like, yeah, so we got this dolphin. It's weird that they're having us render this like alien spaceship, but I don't know, maybe that's like something, I don't know, whatever. Just Tim, you work on that one. And then all of a sudden, like at the end, they were just they're aliens in this, but it's a dolphin simulator, right? It's like you got the email, right? You were on that email thread. No, what? Like,
yeah, look, so, Matt S at Sega.com. No, I'm Matt M at Sega.com. Oh,
who's Matt S? He hasn't worked here.
He doesn't work here anymore.
He hasn't worked here in 10 years.
That's funny because there's actually another Friends reference coming later that I put in my notes so I wouldn't forget it.
Oh, excellent. But yeah, I mean, I got that. And then also that in general, I felt the sound effects were satisfying. I didn't think that there was like enough, because this is the first time I really noticed this, but the sound effects that existed were satisfying. Like when you bottlenose things to death, like that feels good. Maybe it's just me.
No, it's pretty well done.
Feels good. But I felt that there were a number of places where they fell flat on not having sound effects to let you know when you're doing things right. Like when you're starting to solve a puzzle. Like for example, the fact that apparently a large crustacean is the only thing that can break apart rocks. That crazy shell thing.
Yeah, and you need to like put it under. So like, they don't really communicate. See, there's another thing that there's probably one asshole dolphin who's like, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I got to make that rock fall into that shell. But if you don't talk to that one guy, you are just stuck forever.
Yeah. So that I mean, like, I felt that if you. That would be really easy that like even if you like hit it and like knocked it down, and because if you just haphazardly knock it to the correct side, it'll fall down and dislodge that like the bottom brick the first time you interact with it. And even if there was just kind of like a little sound cue that said you did a thing, you'd be like, wait, what did I just do? And then you double back, you'd look into it, you'd be like, oh, okay. But there's none of that. Like you would knock that, it falls off of the screen, and even though it would then theoretically interact with the puzzle in a way that would then lend you to believe that it's solvable, none of it happens on screen.
Yeah, there's no visual cues, there's no auditory cues, and if you swim far enough away, the puzzle resets, and there's no cue that has happened.
Right. I mean, so aside from that just being like slightly different colored and something that resets, and that's some heavy meta knowledge you've got to rely on in order to solve the first like sizable puzzle in the game. I mean, also too, the fact that the little spinies, the crustacean spiny things, right, that are used as like, I was literally stuck for about 5 minutes before I realized that apparently if I just touch these things, they hurt me. But if I ram into this inanimate object that is made of spines harder, that now I was actually very frustrated with that, because I was like, there was nothing to tell me that this is the right way to go.
No, and the thing is, it's man, I was afraid this was going to happen. I was like, this game is so mechanically broken. There's no way to talk about anything in the game without talking about the horrible mechanics. So there's just the mechanics episode. So, but like, it feels like what they should have done is said, oh, if you touch this thing, it hurts you. And that knowledge will steer the player away from ramming into it at a high speed. So instead, you can use literally your only other ability, which is the sonar. And if you shoot it with the sonar, it'll vibrate. And if you shoot it again with the sonar, it'll crack. And if you shoot it a third time with the sonar, it'll explode because magic, right? So because sound waves and like that
resonant frequency.
Because like that would have made so much more sense, because it's like touching it is not an option. What is the one and only way you can interact with things besides touching them? It's your sonar, right? Like it just feels stupid. And it feels like a place where they could have given you like good information, because when you hit it, you get the ouchie animation and the ouchie sound effect, and nothing about those two experiences say back up and hit it harder.
Yeah, no, it's just like in Zia Bridge, where it's like, what if we punch them? I swear to God, if you say punch them really hard, it's like that's basically the answer. It's like, well, punching them isn't working, but what if we punch them harder? And yeah, I didn't even think about it, but absolutely the sonar is the way to go on that, because that makes way more sense.
Yeah. Remember, in the next level, you actually get a sonar that can hurt things, so they clearly thought about including this mechanic.
So all of this is true. But anyways, that was my kind of main note on sound effects, is that there's not enough of them. There's clearly not enough visuals to kind of cue you into the puzzles and how they want you to solve them. And they don't even backtrack it with, sound effects, like anything that you could cue you into. Yeah, you're doing this thing right. The only place where they use sound effects well to like enhance the gameplay are places where the visual is sufficient. Like when you try to get past a giant crystal that is everywhere underwater, I don't know if you've been scuba diving, but those exist. They're around.
Oh no, I've avoided scuba diving because I have a deep fear of giant crystals, and I know they're down there.
Gotcha. You probably don't want to go into the apothecary shop either. It's your nightmare. But so when you interact with those, it forcibly, like the thing like doesn't budge, and it like forces you backwards. So even if there was no sound effect there, I'd be like, oh, I can't really get by. But it goes like dink, dink, dink.
Womp.
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I can't get by. So there's either more stimulus than is necessary, or way not enough, and it's just poorly executed. It's dumb. Yeah. It's bad. I don't like it.
So I have two specific notes about the audio that I want to mention, because they have the opposite problem from what I said was good about the visuals. So the visuals look like every frame a painting, but in motion, there's like this weird, like disparate quality of animation that I found very janky and kind of frustrating. The audio, I would love to have listened to each of these songs, like, a couple times over the course of the level, but because I had no idea what the hell I was supposed to be doing, and I was constantly lost and constantly backtracking, you hear every level song forever, because you don't even get the sweet release of death in the form of like a timeout. Like, this game has very little in terms of like UI and HUD and rules, so you can just wander aimlessly forever. Another reason that really makes me think they were just building a dolphin simulator, and then someone was like, nope, alien combat game, and it's like, no, dolphin simulator, too late, we're shipping it tomorrow. Like,
do you think this was like the same exec that did that was the one who like spearheaded Aliens Colonial Marines?
I mean, maybe someone is just like, they got into the game industry and they were like, I've always just wanted to make an alien game, like that's been my dream, and the first project they were assigned to was Ecco the Dolphin, and they're like, needs more aliens.
Well, was it like that? There's like that Kevin Smith thing where he was signing on to do Superman, and the guy was like, I want a giant spider in Act 3.
You no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so just to condense this particular tangent, basically Kevin Smith was signed on to do Superman. He was talking to like a studio executive who was the producer. I don't know what his name was. And he was like, I want the following things. Thing A, thing B, and both of which were ridiculous. And then thing C was a gigantic spider in Act 3, right? And then so he was just kind of like, well, as long as I can call it like a Gargogian whatever, like horror, like then fine, whatever, I'll give you a giant spider. Then the whole thing obviously fell through. And then the next movie that guy went on to produce,
Arachnophobia,
Wild Wild West.
Oh God.
So that's what this makes me think of. It's just like he's like, I'm getting an alien in a game, so help me Echo.
Yeah, no, it really feels like it. Yeah, oh, no, we're I'm trying to like write it in. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But the music, the fact that the music is so repetitive, I found frustrating, because I actually really like this music. Like, I think it's well written, and I think it's intentionally thematic in a way that is not clear to the player in the beginning of the game, but hearing it on a loop for 25 minutes while I murder myself by crashing into things is not fun, right? It's not the jaunty tunes that you hear in some games that like, oh, these are clever earworms. This is like terrifying, ominous space music that you don't want to be hearing forever because it's supposed to feel tense. And like when you're just sitting there floating, staring at the wall because you don't know where to go and you're just waiting to drown, then it's like, it doesn't feel tense anymore, right? Because all the tension has been sucked out of the situation by me being reminded that I'm playing a video game. And then the same thing happens with the damage sound effect, because I think this should be a rule of game design. Do not make the player have to hear a sound that is supposed to be giving them feedback in a situation where you have stolen control from them. Because there are a lot of places in the game where you are swimming and you just like crash into a pufferfish and you take damage, but the pufferfish can turn on a dime and then you take like 3, 4, 5 hits of damage. Or you're trying to slowly swim past the octopus and you accidentally like press that D-pad a little bit too hard and it doesn't hit you once, it hits you 9 times and you die. Or like you tried to zoom and bash into the little shell things with the spikes on them, but you didn't time it quite right, you were a little too far away and you drift into it when you're not dashing anymore, and you don't just take 1 hit of damage, you take like 2, 3, 4, 5 hits of damage. So like every time you hear the damage noise, it doesn't tell me as a player, oh, I'm being hurt, I should probably do things different. It's like I'm being hurt and the game has just decided to punish me for it and there's nothing I can do, which takes that noise from being like a useful bit of feedback, this is a thing that damages you, and just makes it like grating. So like if you heard it and it was useful, I would say like, that's a well done sound effect. It's not too high, it's not too low. Like it sounds like nothing else in the game. It clearly communicates what's happening. But the fact that it then always comes up in a situation where I have no control removes its utility as a feedback mechanism.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a good kind of like segue into mechanics. Is like a similar thing that is the opposite, and it's just again just kind of all over the place. Is that if memory serves, you don't get that sound effect when you're taking damage from being out of breath.
No, you do not. So if you are suffocating, you just have to notice your life bar going down.
Correct. So again, way over stimulus in one area where it's like you're taking damage, which is like your hit points are non-quantized. So like each one of those bars represents some amount of hits that you can take, you know? But like it's not as many, it's not 5. You can't take 5 hits because that's how many bars there are. It's more than 5.
It's more than 5 depending on the thing that's hitting you, because some things knock a full bar off.
Right. So it's just kind of like I have no idea, like when I'm getting hit by spikes, when he goes like, and I look up and be like, did I take any damage? But then again, at another point, I was just kind of like, oh my God, I am like on death. And no, actually, the first time I died by suffocation, I didn't know what happened. I thought the game glitched out.
Yes, because when you die, you just bamf back to the beginning of the level as if you had just beaten the previous level.
Yeah. So I just thought I was just swimming around, and all of a sudden it was just kind of like beginning of the level. I'm like, what the hell just happened? And then, I was like, well, all right. And I just kind of went about doing my thing. And I was like, and I looked up and I saw that I was out of air and and was low on health. And I was like, I haven't taken any. Oh, okay. And I mean, arguably I should be watching that, but arguably I shouldn't have to watch that, so yeah. And I think that's, segues us into the mechanics, which are just top to bottom garbage, man. I mean, there is just literally my first note in all caps, my all caps note was that this game is not fun.
No,
it's, and that's the thing, is that there are definitely games that I'm all for, like having a panoply of tools in the tool chest, right? So not all games have to be fun, but this game is nothing but like sheerly aggravating, and I cannot believe that that's what they were going for. Like I can't believe that this fun light dolphin simulator was supposed to be a frustrating mess. Like it is not as bad as, but it is in the same realm as Battletoads.
Well, but at least Battletoads, they were like, we're going to make a really hard beat 'em up game. Like there's no way you could convince me, short of like a time machine or the time machine from Childhood's End, where it's like a television that lets you watch all of history. Like I would have to. You still have not read that book? Oh dear God, we're gonna have words after this recording.
Oh, good.
So like, but yeah, like without seeing the design meetings for this game and having them say like, what if we made a confusing, frustrating mess? Ship it, right? Incentivize that employee. Like without knowing that that's what they were going for, nothing about this game, short of how frustrating it is, could possibly make me believe they're actually going for that. I think it's just a lot of just consistent failures. A lot of interesting decisions that in isolation are good, but no one thought about how they would all work together mechanically. And here comes my friend's reference in, I think it's one of the Thanksgiving episodes when Rachel is trying to make the trifle to prove that she can cook. And two of the pages get stuck together and she accidentally makes like sauteed beef and onions.
It is half a traditional English trifle and half a shepherd's pie.
Thank you. Yes. And but then it cuts to toward the end, I think like Joey is eating it and he's like naming each of the ingredients and like it's all the trifle ingredients and then he's like, like steak and onions, good. And it's like that shouldn't follow like, chocolate pudding and whipped cream and ladyfingers. Like all of those things are good in isolation, but together they make a hot mess. And that is the only way I can describe this game is each decision is either a good decision or an understandable bad decision that's like, well, everybody makes mistakes. But then when you put them together, it's just this like nightmare cacophony. Like it's just this hot pile of steak and kidney pie with chocolate pudding.
And actually, I think that first of all, well done. Amazing analogy. And I think that it actually holds up because I really think that the combat system is the beef sauteed with peas and onions.
Yes.
Like that's what it is. That's the thing that ruined it all. Is it like if that was not there, then you just have like, like jam, custard, ladyfingers, like it's all good. But then they just shove this combat system in there and you're like, oh, God, that's not supposed to be there. And then the problem is that you got one jerk who's just kind of like, what's not to like, and you're like, God damn it, Joey, this is not the way that things are supposed to be, Yeah,
but unfortunately, Joey is the producer with all the money in this case. And and so that recipe now became the canonical recipe that got shipped to stores. Like it's just oh God, it's so freaking broken. And you mentioned, I don't want to forget to tell you this because I don't have this in my notes, but you reminded me of it. The air breathing mechanic I actually thought was really clever because it's like, you need to like kind of be aware of because you can see it on the map, which I'll complain about the map later, but you can see on the map like where the air is, or obviously when you're near the surface, you can just like go swim up to the surface of the water. But then when you get sucked up into the spaceship, it wouldn't make sense for them to be there, these little pockets of air in the spaceship. So air just stops mattering and you can just breathe water, I guess. It wasn't really clear because when I was watching it in the speed run, I was like, wait a minute, he's underwater completely in these spaceship levels and the other bar is actually completely gone. So like you taught me about, like I had to care about this for the whole game. And then you throw me into these last like 2 or 3 levels where you're like, forget all that stuff. That's breathing. What a wacky thing to have to do. What if, let's just say you don't have to do that anymore. And like that to me is just a lazy design choice. Cause you either make that at the beginning of the game where you just say like, you know what, we're not going to make you worry about breathing. Yes, we know dolphins can't breathe underwater, but it's a video game. Who cares? Or you find a clever way to bake it into the alien levels, just like you did in all the other levels. But instead they were just like, level design is hard and just literally removed a core game mechanic.
Yeah, like the core game mechanic. Because aside from your hit points, that's one other thing you have to manage. And I think that one of the things I have down here is that what would have been way more interesting is like, let's say that you remove the beef sauteed with peas and onions, right? Let's say you take that right out, right? Then you don't even need hit points anymore. All you need is just a mechanic that lets you know when you're running out of air, and it's supposed to having the sonic panic-inducing like countdown. What if you just had like an air bar that, just like slowly went down. And then like when it gets to like a quarter, like maybe everything gets a little bit darker and you move a little bit more sluggish because you're low on oxygen, And then when it just goes all the way down, then it just resets you to the start of the screen. That'd be a very stark visual, so you'd know something was happening, especially if like the bar started to flash or something like that. And then, it would give you that extra amount of time to be like, okay, I have to go find air right now, and then that's the only thing that you manage is you just manage your air,
Yeah.
And aside from that, it's just a puzzle game. Doesn't have to have crazy aliens in it. Doesn't have to have the beef.
I would even take it. The aliens to me are not the thing that feels wildly out of place, because you could even still have the aliens.
Sorry, real fast. A game's bad when you say in the Dolphin game, the aliens aren't what feel out of place. Like there's something else that fails the grub test. Like there is something else, such an extreme outlier that outlier is not the outlier.
Well, again, I always imagine myself in these design meetings just being like we've just play tested the game, and I'm like, listen, it's not the aliens that are out of place in our Dolphin simulator, and you're on the other side of the big oak table, and you're like, whoa. What can you possibly be about to say next? But like, I truly believe you could still have that story, right? Like this is, because I mean, really, when you think about it, a lot of video games like Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Bubsy the cat, like lots of video games star stupid animals doing dumb crap. Like I could even accept like this is a hyper intelligent dolphin in a world that may or may not have any people in it, because you do see dinosaurs at one point, and it's not clear if that's teleportation or time travel or both. And then you get sucked up into space and you fight aliens, but the way you destroy the ship is through the puzzle mechanics you've been learning over the course of the game. So you have Dolphin Simulator mechanics, and then you realize, oh, this is an exploration game, and I have to go like find these other dolphins. And then the more dolphins you find, the more you're like, oh, there's this bigger evil like we don't know and understand. And then it turns out it's aliens, and that's weird, but whatever. And then you use the puzzle and exploration mechanics you've been learning throughout the game to destroy or otherwise, deal with the alien ship. But they didn't do that. Like 2 or 3 levels into the game, you get a sonar that has the ability to kill people, which for some reason they don't just give you at the beginning of the game, but then it is required from the moment you get it on. It's kind of like, it's almost like the Master Sword, except in a game without swords. Like if the entire first half of Zelda, you didn't have a sword and there was no combat, and then they were just like, oh, by the way, go stab this pig to death. And then,
okay.
Yeah, and then when you go to the aliens, you like sonar him to death. Like it's why? Like, well, and actually, why does this game have combat?
And actually, again, I agree with you because, and super sold on it because, like, is that it would make way more sense if there was a big giant alien, right? And you beat him by, like, in solving a puzzle that turned his ship against him or something like that, right? Because again, the whole thing with like dolphins that you would be kind of teaching and trying to sell on a younger kid, which is, I assume, what this game was marketed to, is that they're intelligent, And so if like you had to use, your like intelligence and, wiles to like get through all of these different things like that would be on theme. It'd be on theme for the dolphins, especially if you focus on the breathing. Like you could even half-heartedly sell this as like a, semi-educational game, like being like, hey, we're focusing in, because I mean, I bet you if you did that, like if you made the entire mechanics about breathing, about how their sonar like if their sonar interacted more like real sonar, where like it interacts with like different creatures and all this other sort of stuff, and it was all about puzzle solving, you could say like, and now this person at a minimum has played this game. It was an interesting puzzle game that developed all of these different cognitive abilities from the act of solving these puzzles, and they learned a little bit about dolphins, that they probably won't forget because they played this awesome dolphin simulator. Instead, they're like, no, gotta have a combat mechanic. You can't have a game without a combat mechanic. And I do like that more and more we are starting to see games stray away from straight up combat as conflict.
Yeah.
It's like there can be, dude, it has been quite a long time since I have been in a fight, but I experience conflict regularly, Like, I'm pretty sure that's not the only way to represent conflict.
Yeah. And I mean, it gets boring and repetitive. Even if it's done very well, it can feel boring and repetitive. But when it goes poorly, you get this, right? Like, because, when we played World of Illusion, we were blown away by how clever that combat mechanic was. And it didn't have to have a combat mechanic, but we understood why they shoehorned it in. And at least they were like, well, if it's going to have a combat mechanic and there's going to be stakes in terms of like you can die, then we need to make it like an appropriate combat mechanic for this like theme and for Disney and everything. And they didn't do that with this. Like they just looked at every other game and they were like, well, yeah, there's things that can hit you and you die, and then there's enemies and you have to kill them. And it's like, but video games don't have to have that, right? And we eventually learned that lesson, and that eventually became like an industry-wide understanding, but it sure as hell wasn't industry-wide at this point in history, because there is no way if a game like this was made now that they would have said, well, we got to shoehorn a combat mechanic in there, because people would be like, no, we don't. No, we don't have to do that.
No, of course we don't. And I mean, I think that basically what probably happened was somebody said, like, all right, we've got this dolphin simulator. It does this, that. It's kind of like solving puzzles. It's kind of cool, kind of fun. And this person's like, yeah, so like, what do you fight? It's like, no, it's more like a puzzle kind of solving, more like in that genre, like Math Blaster. No, not like it's still a fun game. It's just not, there's no combat in it. Like, I'm sorry, John. Come, just run me through it again. It's just like, it's because I think that those were the two camps that things fell into: fun, combat. Because I mean, like, I'm trying to think. There are, again, very, very few and far between games in this era that are non-combat based. Yeah. And they fell into very distinct categories. Like it was either a combat based conflict, or if it wasn't, it was very specific. Like it was like a sim, like Sim City, I mean, and even some of the sims that we've played, like what was the one that's half sim, half
ActRaiser.
ActRaiser, right? Exactly. I mean, like as much as I love that game, and I thought that they executed on it way better, you could easily say that somebody said like, oh, we're gonna create this great city sim. It's like, well, you got to have combat, and then like,
yeah, but again, like, let's try and do something, but let's like be thoughtful about it, right? And I don't remember a lot of games at this time in history that were walking simulators, where they were like exploring games for the sake of exploring, right? Or puzzle games for the sake of puzzles that weren't games, right? And what I mean by that is like Tetris is a game. When you're playing Tetris, you're playing a game. When you're playing Final Fantasy or The Legend of Zelda or Metroid or like any of these story-driven games, you really want to kind of forget you're playing a game and not think about like the mechanics and what makes it like video gamey. But we didn't really get like walking simulators and exploration based games until later, which is probably partially a factor of just literally storage space, right? So there was the culture, like they just didn't make games like that as much, but also the fact that like you couldn't have a giant sprawling world to explore, because where would you put it all, right? There had to be other things that made the game take longer, like combat and death. And I think we're like unearthing all these pieces of evidence that this game was built by two different developer teams, and then it was like super collided together, which is the game has no inventory. It has no HUD or UI or collectibles or levels or points or anything. There is nothing about this game that you would sit down and look at the first 30 seconds of gameplay and think that you are going to have to sonar blast an alien to death at all, right? Like everything about this game feels like they wanted to make, or maybe if they didn't even know, they like in their intuition was like, what if we just made a game where like it was like a dolphin simulator? Like you're just like a dolphin and you like swim around and like maybe there's like other dolphins and you have to like help them like reunite with their pod. Like, could we do that? Like, could we have a game that's like, that's all you do? And then somebody in the room was just like, no. And it wasn't like they weren't being malicious. It's like they just literally didn't know any better. And like if you're watching through the magical time machine television, you'd be like shaking it like, no, you could do it. Die Hard hasn't been written yet, Brian. We could write it. Like it's like, no, make the game you were supposed to make.
So I agree. And I think that I think that if you like take this game and again, just pull that out. It works really well. And I've been struggling this entire time to really think about what games there are from this era that are non-combat based conflict, right? Because like we said, The Sims, and there's probably another handful of examples, but I would be really fascinated.
You mean SimCity there, buddy?
Whatever. SimCity and Sim Earth and all of those sim simulators. But I'd be really interested for our listeners, contact us through the usual means, but let us know like what games from this era you can think of that, actually do like have that strong non-combat based conflict. Cause I'd like to work a few more of those into our play cycle, because that's something I'd like to see more of, because it's a lot more common nowadays, but certainly less common from the time.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I'm not going to sit here and just quietly think on the air until I come up with something, but simulator games, like city building games, those kinds of things, and raw puzzle games, like
right.
Those are
Dr. Mario.
Oh, I can think of one example that you might say is actually a kind of combat: sports games.
Yep. Yeah, sports games could potentially fall into, I mean, and you could definitely say that certainly with some sports games that really strays the line for, like, what is combat. But no, that's another good example. Like I said, like I just can't think of anything right here on the spot. And like you said, it'd be rude for us to just have this long pause of, us just both reflecting contemplatively. And also too, I mean, even if we did for hours on end, we would probably miss some gems. So, I'm just kind of like, hey, let's as usual, not do any research and farm this stuff out to our listeners, because I mean, I don't do research now and I ain't gonna start.
Yeah, no, and listener feedback does not and will never count as research. So people can always feed us information through those channels. But I think sports games, you could make an argument, one, that a lot of sports video games added crazy combat mechanics where it's like, it's baseball, but with robots who have guns. And like, that's an actual game. I actually really enjoyed that game. Or like, it's football or hockey, but they're mutants and they can kill each other. Like, so they already took sports, which are arguably derived from formalized warfare, and then sort of backed them up closer to formalized warfare when they brought them to video game consoles. So sport games, like whether or not that counts as combat, I don't know. Like you can get hurt. The main thing is like it's people fighting each other. Like that's you could still make a case for that. So Sims and raw puzzle games. Ooh, man, I hope we're not. I hope that's not the bottom of that barrel. Like, I hope there's something we are either just idiots and we're overlooking, or that there's just gems we've never heard of or thought about.
So with all of that in mind, does it hold up?
No. Not only does it not
flat no.
Not only hard no. Not only does it not hold up, but I considered adding a rating that I was going to call double nostalgia goggles, where it's like one of those animated GIFs where the guy pulls off his sunglasses like in shock and there's other sunglasses under it. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to change our rating system without consulting you, but I
nostalgia telescope where there's like several images.
It's nostalgia pre-LASIK, where like you've never actually seen this game, and now that you're seeing what it looks like, you're like, oh no, like it's dude, it's bad. Like it's bad. Like it's a lot. And I want to say this explicitly because I feel like I wasn't very clear throughout. There's a lot of interesting decisions that were made in this game. There's a lot of good chocolate pudding and raspberry cream, and then there's just also a lot of sautéed beef with onions and peas, and they just don't go together.
Beef.
Oh god, it's just so bad. Like it's
the opposite. It's like, where's the beef? But we're like, why the beef?
Yes. I mean, it really, really is. So like, I to say you need nostalgia goggles to play this game, I would say you need nostalgia goggles to play this game, and you need to have actually played it when you played it as either a kid or, earlier in your life. So if you played it the way we played it as a dolphin simulator, no amount of nostalgia goggles is going to help you, because that's not what this game is.
Right. No, I agree with you. No, it does it hold up? No. It is a unique brand of terrible in that it retroactively, like, I remember this game very fondly, and it's just like all of a sudden, not only because with the other games I've remembered fondly and then they've been terrible, I've been like, oh, okay, well, like with now what I know about games and all sorts of stuff like that this game just doesn't hold up, right? This game never was the game that I thought it was. Like, and you kind of hit the nail on the head where it's just kind of like it'd be like going back in time and finding out that your favorite dog in the world was actually like a rabid bear on cocaine. Got the cocaine reference. You thought it wasn't going to happen. You thought you'd get to the end, but no, here we are, 11th hour, Cinderella story. Got the cocaine reference. Anywho, but what were we talking about?
He's a bottlenose dolphin. I thought for sure. I mean, there's like if a drug reference has to be somehow inserted in every episode for some reason, how that's become a thing is like alarming to me. But you would think like it'd have to do with their giant nose, not a coked out bear that you thought was a dog as a child.
But the reference makes as much sense as this game.
The curtain falls.
Oh my God, we didn't talk about the aliens.
We did not talk about the aliens. How did we get all the way through the episode and not talk about the aliens?
Okay, this game, I mean, like we mentioned like the visuals and stuff like that there are aliens, but like there are aliens. Like
actual H.R. Geiger aliens. Like aliens. Like Ridley Scott's going to sue somebody aliens.
Oh my God, if the end boss looks exactly like that, right? Like exactly like aliens. Like the aliens.
Aliens. Yeah. No, I mean, and it's just... So at the beginning, you know, like you're dolphining around, and all of a sudden, like everything gets rent from the ocean, and you're like, huh, that was a weird animation. Whatever. It sets up the core conflict. And then like it's not until way later that you're like, no, they got beamed into space for space reasons. And then so you start like going through this ominous like space alien station
ship. I guess
thing.
It's a ship.
Yeah. Huh. And you go through all that, and then you see the final nightmare-inducing boss, and you're like, I'm sorry, who was the target audience for this game again?
Yeah, and mechanically, the alien part of the game also has basically nothing in common with the entire first part of the game because the breathing mechanic has been removed. There is a ton of stuff like alien technology that you have to destroy with your sonar or else it will hurt you, but it looks exactly like all the other alien technology, so it's not obvious that like these are the things you have to blow up with your death sonar. And then when you are moving through some of the levels move, so you are swimming around obstacles in a space that is moving, which has never happened before in the game, but this is now the very end of the game. So a core game mechanic is changed, removed. Another core game mechanic goes from being like a thing that happens to being the only thing that's happening, which is the combat. And the theming and story of the game goes from being dolphin simulator, and sometimes you have to like, you know, ram rocks to death or crash into fish at high speed, to being like aliens are abducting all sea life, and you personally, Ecco the Dolphin, have to murder this alien with your death sonar. And then I guess all the fish, how do they survive the trip back to Earth? Like none of this is explained. None of this is addressed. And when you talk to the dolphins during the end sequence, they're just like, we will celebrate you forever. And it's like, aren't you concerned about what just happened? Like, was this part of your normal experience?
Yeah, this is a Tuesday for them. No, and that's the thing is that I didn't even think about is that like, you know, Echo everybody gets like beamed up to the ship, right? And then you destroy, you know, Mother Brain, and then you swim out, right? And so but then like the idea is that you didn't beam yourself back down, right? So did you just hit the ocean at terminal velocity, not burning up on reentry? And like, how did that?
Okay. Your physics is a lot better than mine. So tell me exactly how many of the fish would die in what I'm about to describe, because I'm guessing it's all of them.
Almost certainly all.
No, wait. Okay. So let's say a really large volume of water
Sure.
was sucked up into the ship, like a sizable portion of the ocean, but somehow not a sizable portion of the ocean life. So there's now this giant, let's say, sphere of water, and Echo and all the fish and things and all the other dolphins are like in the center of the sphere. And the ship was in low enough orbit, even though you can clearly see stars in the background and they are definitely outside of the atmosphere. The ship was in a low enough orbit that the sphere of water protects you as you fall through the atmosphere. So some of that's burned off, but you know, you're like insulated by the water. And then when it crashes into the earth, you do like a Jack and Rose style, like swim away from the point of impact to reduce your momentum.
Well, because like I'm not sure that
I need to let our listeners know that the look on your face is that you are seriously considering my proposition. Like you are not waiting to make jokes. Like you are actually trying to deconstruct the madness I just spelled out.
I am because okay, so I'm a chemist by trade, which means that not a physicist. This would be best for Megan's father. He would probably have a better idea for that. But a couple of just things off the top of my head is, one, I don't think it's hitting the water that's really the problem, because like you at that point you would just be moving at terminal velocity, right? If you had not been completely burned up on reentry and your flesh singed to the bone, you would just, that would be it. You'd just be moving at terminal velocity, which you could survive. It's the whole. I mean, especially a dolphin would, because they're very they're aerodynamic people. So I'm not as worried about that. I mean, like I may be wrong, but that's not where I think it all falls apart. I think it falls apart with the protective water sphere, because first of all, I mean, like I am sure that there is a sphere of water large enough that your proposition is theoretically sound, but like how big would that ball of water have to be? Like I don't know, because if it starts to become planetary size, it's going to throw Earth off its orbit just by virtue of being that massive and that close. But let's put a pin in that. I think that the bigger problem would be like if all of a sudden that amount of water were to smash like into Earth's atmosphere, it would actually smash and like disperse.
Yes, that's a good point, because it would not for no reason hold its shape.
Right. And so then the problem is that so momentum would be conserved, right? So then like that would hit, right? And so the water, which would basically act as one mass, would slow, but your momentum wouldn't, right? You would maintain your momentum, I mean, slowed by the water, but then you would actually rocket forward. So I think that you may get actually ejected from the protective water sphere. Again, depending upon the size of the protective water sphere. Well, but I haven't done the math on this. Okay, so if any of our listeners do the math, do me a favor, go outside of your house and just scream the math, because that will definitely get the police called, and we'll check the police blotter. But
so
I mean,
I'm just thinking, like, would the variable that would be most easily changed and make this most plausible just be putting the giant protective water sphere closer to Earth? So if the alien ship, because remember, you've just killed aliens that you were escaping from. So if the alien ship you're escaping from was like, let's just say in low Earth orbit, right? Like not really way out there, but like still kind of in the atmosphere a little bit. So you're in a place where instead of the sphere crashing against the atmosphere, it's in a place where as the atmosphere gets thicker, it would shape the sphere more and more into the, expected like teardrop shape.
Sure. I mean, I do feel at this point we do need to re-emphasize to the audience that this is not our area of expertise. Please don't quote us on any of this. Also, but I mean, I may certainly be wrong on, but I think the lower in Earth's orbit you're in, don't you have to be traveling faster, right?
Well, presumably the ship was, I mean, it's an alien. Let's just assume these aliens are not idiots, George. They have very advanced alien technology, which is why they're stealing dolphins.
Yeah, that's why they come down to Earth and kick a dolphin with their bare hands.
So the alien ship is flying, let's say, more or less directly away from the Earth, which would require thrust so powerful to not have to try and leave the atmosphere at an angle, right? Like in the trajectory parabola you would normally observe. So they're leaving at, let's say, a straight line away from the surface. So when the protective water sphere leaves the ship, it could presumably be falling more or less straight down, not like along the re-entry trajectory.
I so desperately want to contact the guy from XKCD and get him to chuck that for us. But anyways, I think that, you know, the moral of the story is that the alien is completely bonkers, but eventually you do defeat him. And I think that I think Ecco had some words of wisdom behind that.
He did. He gathers everyone in his pod around, and what he says to them is,
the curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.